Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable. Welcome back to the Inspiring Possible podcast. It's so exciting to have you here again. You keep on coming back and listening, and that's a good thing. And so if you're a first-time listener, welcome. We here at Inspiring Possible just like to give you some maybe little nuggets for your life to help you along the journey because, before me and my guest pushed this record button today, we were talking about, life is a crazy adventure and it life sometimes, and some days are good and some days are more challenging, but hopefully today, if you just hang in there with us, we're going to leave you with some nuggets to maybe think of ways to maybe actually live a more aligned life. And y'all know we've talked a little bit about this on the podcast before, but it's hard to figure out this way to live an aligned living way. And so guess what? I got us an expert today to come talk to us a little bit about, how to live more aligned. And if you are somebody that maybe feels disconnected, unfulfilled, stuck in your life, and I mean, I know a lot of y'all that listen, you're either on the path to personal development or personal growth, and you know that you want something a little bit maybe different in your day-to-day life. Well, then you came to the right place today. So I'm super excited to welcome David Waldas to the show today. And he's like a whole holistic personal development leader person. So he's going to give us a lot of information and insights today, maybe on how to just live a little bit more aligned. So welcome, David.
Well, thanks, Christy. It's great to be here. I do love that conversational format, right? Like we're here connecting and we're connecting with the people that are here listening and here to support. And so, yeah, it
We
feels really
just
good.
humans that just happen to connect at this point in time to hopefully impart some things to other humans, is
Yeah.
the way I look at it.
And it happens really magically through conversation, I think, when we're just real with ourselves and real with each other. So, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, David, tell me, I'm just curious about how your journey got you to where it is today.
Yeah. So it's funny. I never liked to tell this story before because, you know, it's pretty. I've lived a pretty interesting and odd life as far as experiences go, and as I started telling you, I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty interesting. And I always thought it was a part of me that wanted to kind of hide and go, like, I'm just here to help people. Just not worry about how I got here.
Yeah.
But I grew up. I was a pretty weird kid. ADHD, dyslexic. Probably would be diagnosed as on the spectrum if I was current day. And so, the teachers didn't know what to do with me. I was just, it didn't match. I had a high IQ and, they just couldn't get me to do anything. And I was joked. It was like I had the answers to their questions, but I had no idea what they were asking me. So I didn't know what the question was.
Okay. So it didn't always, it's not that you couldn't answer. It's just like, I don't understand what you're really trying to get at here.
Yeah. Or I could answer, but I didn't even know what they were asking me. It was just, there's a knowing in me. Right. And so, I made it through high school somehow. And, I think I was a soccer player. And so I think I went to college to play soccer. And, and just as I was leaving for college, I got diagnosed with ADHD and they gave me Ritalin back then, but Adderall. And I was
Okay.
like, I didn't know how I felt about it or anything, but when I took it, all of a sudden that other world that I was living in where I was kind of disconnected, didn't quite know what was going on. All of a sudden I knew the rest of the world everybody else was living in. And when I took it, I could relate all of a sudden. My brain connected with that world. And I, went on, finished college, got my master's degree, became a teacher. And, I didn't necessarily stick with the medication, but it showed me how to connect with that world. And then on my 30th birthday, I got invited to a psychic fair. And that wasn't really anything I ever thought of myself as or involved in, but why
Yeah,
not go
how
check
does
this
one
out?
get invited to this? That's what I need to know, David.
You know what? My wife at the time had seen an advertisement for it, and she's like, "Hey, why don't we go check this out? It's on your birthday. Let's go." And I'm like, "Whatever, I'm game. I'll check it out."
Why not? I
Yeah,
mean,
it's and so walk in, it's this big, huge ballroom, like 50 different psychics set up at their tables, and I see this one woman, Sandy, and it's just obvious for me to sit with her. And again, it's funny it didn't occur to me, like, isn't that weird that it was obvious to me? You know?
Yeah,
Oh,
you were that's
intuition, right?
something there was something drawing you to her to be like, "You should go sit down with that woman."
Yeah, and I had to, and so I did, and she shuffles her cards and lays them out in front of me, and she goes, "I see you're planning this big move across the country. Not everybody's happy with this, are they? But you know you need to do what's right for you." And I was just like, "What?" Like, "You how do you know this?" And then she goes, "You know, that job you've been wanting is coming through in the next 2 weeks." And then she finishes going, "Oh, sweetie, I really like this one. I'm hearing the same gift I have, it's gonna open up for you too and quick." I was like, "All right." Literally the next day, I was driving over to our realtor's office, and we've been having some problems with her, and she just was kind of misrepresenting what was the house was, and decided we wanted to terminate our contract, and she'd been ghosting me for about a week, and so I was all worked up. I'm like, "I'm just gonna show up at her office and get this taken care of." And so I'm in the turn lane getting ready to pull in, and I heard this subtle voice, "Not now." And I ignored it because I was on a mission, and then, "Not now." And I heard it for sure the second time, but still ignoring it because I'm gonna go get this taken care of.
'Cause I gotta get this thing done
Yeah, like, I
today,
got
we gotta
human
confront
concerns here.
this.
And then it was, "Not now." And I was like, "Oh." I pulled out of the turn lane, went home. An hour later, I'm sitting on the couch and I hear, "Now." Get back in the car, drive over to the realtor's office. As I'm walking in the front door, I open the door and I can see all the way through. She's opening the back door at the same time. Walks up to me with the paperwork to terminate the contract, like we have an appointment or something. I sign it and we're done. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this world that Sandy opened up for me, like life's gonna be easy. Now I have like this navigation tool. And turns out that was super naive. You know, like anybody that has used their intuition to guide them, it's not easy street. It's not how do we get to avoid the lessons life has for us. It's really about being used to develop ourselves and often steered into situations where I had to grow in some way or, you know, experience something to get to know myself better. And my life became all about personal and spiritual development. And over time, I was a teacher. And so I left teaching and started doing readings myself. And then in 2016, so gosh, it was 8 years ago, I was driving on I-70 through Vail, Colorado. If you're familiar with that, it's kind of a well known stretch of highway, but it kind of curves around through this valley and then it starts up the pass. And as we're coming around some of the last corners, I realized there's this huge rainbow. And I'm like, that looks like it's coming down like in the highway. As we came around the last bend, we drove into it and literally just covered in these refracted rainbows. I remember my daughters Olivia and Ava were in the back seat looking at them and they're like, what? There was a
This is
couple
so
driving.
cool.
It was so crazy. There was a couple driving in the car next to us. They both had their hands up in the air, like, and I don't know how they were driving. Like, I didn't even know how I was driving because in that moment there was a spontaneous shift that happened where I just popped into the state of consciousness where I knew myself as that psychic, intuitive, spiritual person, which was kind of a world I would go into. But I also knew myself as this grounded, solid dad and business person, entrepreneur. And I'd bounce back and forth between those worlds. But in that moment, they married. And I was right on this cusp where I could access both of them at the same time and be solid and grounded, yet super intuitive. And my whole world just got quiet. And I'd never experienced that before. The world was always so noisy to me from picking up all the energy and all the commotion out there. And it just silenced, and I had access to both worlds. And it took me like about 3 or 4 months to unpack that and turn it into the Aligned Living System, which has gone through a lot of upgrades since then with more spontaneous type downloads. But it's the work that I do now, teaching other people how to access that really silent yet grounded and intuitive tapped in place where we're really in touch deeply with who we are and not so much with all the overlay the world just throws on top of us all the time and distracts us with. And so
Yeah, well, and
that's how I got here.
yeah, that's how you got there in a nutshell.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm sure there's more, like, even more stories underneath all that,
Oh,
in that
yeah.
main story, huh?
There are. So
Yeah,
many
but I mean,
crazy experiences.
yeah, I mean, and it is interesting always to hear, like, how people's journeys have
Mm,
led them to where they are,
yeah,
in
yeah,
whatever they're doing and what they're passionate about. And it sounds like for you, in that moment where you were able to find that grounding and kind of it almost sounds like peace, quiet, and a
absolutely.
certainty
Mhm,
about what you were to do next,
yeah,
really allowed you to have that space where you're like, "Wow, this is new. I don't have to combat all this other stuff or all these other voices," or not that it doesn't come up, but that you're able
sure,
to kind of find your way back to what is it that I'm feeling that I'm supposed to in that moment and leaning into that intuition, which I think a lot of people,
even myself, sometimes when you get busy in life, you're not all if you're not practicing listening to that,
Mhm,
right, or
mhm.
leaning into that, then it can be really hard to notice it when it does come in
Right,
to kinda
and the
help
world's
guide
so
you.
loud, as people always say, "Oh my gosh, my intuition got so much louder when I started working with you." I'm like, "It didn't. The everything else got quieter." You know?
Mhm.
And that's the thing too is, the whisper is still a whisper, but we don't hear it when we're distracted and the world's noise is coming at us all the time and we're running everybody else's emotional energy through us. And then when we stop and just go, "Oh, I can actually have this stillness. I can settle into this place inside myself where I am so clear." And,
Yeah.
I don't have to be my coping mechanisms anymore because I don't need to cope with that. It's just out there and I'm in here.
Yeah. Well, what are some things that you bring people through to, like, help them just, number 1, become aware that they do have this internal, I don't know if you wanna call it GPS, or I don't know how
Yeah,
you
yeah,
would
that's
frame
it's
it, but,
for
like,
sure.
internal guidance system that they can pay attention a little bit more to. How do you help them learn how to, I guess, silence or kind of quiet the noise around them?
Yeah, and so, part of what's kind of my natural gifts or that are just kind of innate in me is an ability to work with other people's energy. And so, what I'm always doing is what I call paving the pathway for people. I don't want them to need me to do this. This is a system that they can plug into themselves, into their lives. And when I work with them, I help them pave the pathway for that. And so most of us are walking through the world with a feedback loop that originates outside of us. Particularly those of us that are more empathic, we walk into a room and we feel the experience of the room. When we sit down with someone, we feel the experience of them and it flows into us. And then, we deal with us and we deal with the energy of the room and them and the emotions coming into us. And it's so much to manage. And it's often where we develop coping mechanisms, sometimes of avoidance, sometimes of overgiving because everybody else's challenges feel like our own. And I think that's really true for a lot of people where they just sit down with somebody and the moment they connect with them and feel their suffering, they feel it inside themselves. And so now I'm actually experiencing your suffering. And so I'm as committed to you resolving this as you are because I'm experiencing it and I can't really feel comfortable until you're comfortable. And so when that's our experience, and then we go to the next person and then we experience that, like we're always bailing the ocean with a 5-gallon bucket, and we're giving away our energy to people all the time, particularly those of us in the helping fields, right? Where we're, we go, okay, that's them, this is me. But this feeling of when we feel somebody deeply, they become our responsibility. And when we get hooked into that, we often lose responsibility for ourselves because we're always hijacked by everybody else's stuff. And it sounds beautiful, that we're so giving, but the truth is that when we get locked into that, like we're giving away ourselves all the time. And so when other people's energy is not contagious to us in the same way, all of a sudden now we can serve in a much deeper level. And, it's rather ironic, right, to think that by me pulling my energy into me and letting other people be in wherever they need to be in, that I actually get to support them more. But that is the truth because we get worn out, help them stabilize where they're stuck because now we made it more comfortable because we're both there, right? And especially if we're commiserating about it and telling the story together. We have a shared wound. Those are the best way to stabilize those things. And it's just our human nature. And so when we intervene on that, and just go, you know what, there's a different way for me to do this, and it starts with me. And I talk about this a lot. And I hope this doesn't sound triggering to people, but we abandon ourselves all the time. And the moment we make somebody else is suffering or the world suffering a priority over ourselves, we leave this. We go into stories. Somebody says something to us that we don't like. We go into a story. We abandon who we are. Somebody says something that's nice to us and we like it. We go into another story where we abandon who we are. And so much of this is about who am I? I can feel it. I can experience it. And I'm unwilling to abandon that. And for those of us
Mm,
that have a more spiritual or even religious perspective, it's really that place where we're that clear inside of ourselves is the place where we meet source energy, or it's where we meet God, and it's the place where our will and God's will align. And the moment we abandon that, we're struggling and fighting against that sense of self and that sense of why we're really here. And so to me, that
yeah.
that piece of, if we're whatever time we abandon ourselves, we're abandoning God. We're going to a story, we're going into some sort of stuckness, and that can be a little hard to wrap our head around until we start to have the true experience of aligning with ourselves and going, ah, this is me, and I'm not leaving this. I'm not leaving this anymore. I'm not going to abandon myself anymore.
Yeah, and that is interesting because you know what I think about when as we are growing up, right? When we're younger, I think there is a lot of times these innate messages or messages around us that even
Yes,
call us to abandon ourselves, right? Whether it's
100%.
societal expectations, whether it's the ways that our caregivers are reacting to us when we're maybe more in our, own self, like you get those
Absolutely.
different messages. And so I do think people start to question, like, should I even trust me or should I even what is makes sense to abandon. Just go ahead and abandon, go over here.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we do too, right? Is and it happens at a very young age, and sometimes we continue to do it into adulthood, where we go, the world, my parents or school or whatever is asking something from me that's different than who I'm naturally am, and so I'd be a lot better off if I didn't have this high sensitivity, if I didn't have this emotionality, if I didn't have this drive or this commitment to making things happen. Often these are our greatest gifts, but when they're immature, when they're just showing up in us unrefined as kids, the systems around us, we're not usually appreciated for our greatest gifts as kids. In fact, I often joke and saying, what I was constantly in trouble as a kid for the same thing that people seek me out and pay me for now. Which
Yeah.
is my insight and my ability to see deeply into things. Are like, kids, stop telling the truth so much. Like you're really being disruptive. And so what we do is we find these parts of us that don't fit well, don't get good reviews, don't get appreciated, and we go, I'd be way better off if that wasn't part of me. And so I'm gonna just make that not part of me. And we sever ourselves, we fracture our wholeness. And it feels like a great idea in the moment. And we do this into our adulthood sometimes too. We do it in relationships. And we fracture a part of us off and go, life is so much easier now. I'm so much more in control. It's so much simpler. This is great. But the short-sightedness, we don't realize what we're actually doing is we're fracturing our wholeness. And so then everything that we do, all of our unconscious behavior becomes about bring that wholeness back. And we've already decided we can't find it inside of ourselves because that's where the problem was. And so we look out in the world and we go, oh, when I'm in this relationship or when I'm in this job or when I'm acting this way with this situation, I feel whole. And we can always identify those places because we can ask ourselves the question, where in my life am I willing to sacrifice myself, give myself away, behave in weird ways that I would never behave otherwise in order to maintain this thing? And it's always the clue that like, oh, there's something in me that I fractured that I'm trying to find completeness with out in the world. And I'm giving myself away. I'm abandoning myself to do it. And when we reclaim that, which is a lot of the work that we do, and bring that wholeness back into ourselves, and that part of us is just trying to get home. It just wants to re-embrace us and for us to re-embrace it. There's no, like lag period of resentment that we severed it off. It just comes home to us. And then all of a sudden, we're not willing to give ourselves away in the same way. All of a sudden, we feel whole already in that area that we've reclaimed. And our behavior and our desire shifts. And those relationships, those situations can still be really powerful for us, but we're in them for a different reason. We're in them because they're resonant. We're in them because they feel good and they are inspiring and powerful, not because we have to have them and it's this
Yeah, they're
desperate need
adding
for
to, they're
completion.
not necessary, is almost what I'm hearing
Absolutely.
you say, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
If somebody is like, "You know what, David, I'm listening to everything you say right now, and, I do feel like there's parts of me that I may have abandoned along the way,
And we
or
all have, so
I."
I hope you're
Yeah, I mean,
thinking
we
that
all
because 'cause we've all done it.
I might have left this part over there because it wasn't received well, or maybe I thought it wasn't serving me in the capacity that I felt, was needed at that time, and as you're saying this, I wonder if it is time for me to try to find my way back to me. What are the first steps that you kinda help people or you walk with people through to help them find their way back to wholeness and really to themselves?
Yeah, and so it does start with reversing that feedback loop, saying, "I'm gonna originate my experience of me here in me as opposed to out there." And it makes sense, right? We walk into a room and there's a lot going on. We experience it and we experience everybody else and we experience all these demands of the world and our identity that we've created out of engaging with those demands. And then we try to get clear about who we are, like good luck. Right. And often when we do a lot of soul searching and personal development, we start to learn about our coping mechanisms that are actually on top of who we are. And so it's a really interesting thing. I did a lot of personal growth work before I did this download, before I got the download and the spontaneous experience of this. And I was like, I am so different than who I thought I was. Like it's shocking to me, and it's fantastic because I like myself so much more than I thought I liked myself, and it's never the opposite. Like our coping mechanisms are the things that we usually are like, "Oh, this is fine, this is great," but when we find ourselves underneath it, we're like, "Dang, I'm pretty
Who
awesome."
did you think you were before? I'm curious. Who did you think you were, David?
You know what? I really saw myself as, I always gave my energy away. I gave it away to everybody because I could feel everybody so deeply. I thought I was the sheriff, and so people that were doing things that didn't feel good, I thought I had to confront them and make them different, and I thought I had to always empower the victim, and, all my energy went into these external pieces that were it wasn't changing anything. It was just playing along with what's the problems in the world. And I thought I was changing the world by doing that. But what I realized was I'm just doing the same thing everybody else was doing. And when I came back in, I was like, oh, I need to stop engaging with that and bring a different energy, a different way of looking at this end. Not that we're good guys and bad guys and victims and perpetrators, but there's a place where we, all are in our truth. And when we're in our truth, we're none of those things. And so that the victims and perpetrator, world that we live in, which is everywhere, and it's just getting blasted to us in the media, it's blasted from everywhere. And people on the opposite sides of it are sure that they're the victim, the other one's a perpetrator. And then the one's like it's
And this
gotten
person's
so
right and you're wrong.
absolutely right. And so when we come home, we're like, gosh, I just don't need to engage with that. I can actually bring a honesty, just integrity, just myself. And like that's why I loved how you started just with a conversation. Like this isn't about like, oh, we're the experts here, and thank you for
We
listening to
have
us.
arrived.
Right, right.
We
It's
have the secrets and we're keeping them all from you.
but then we're all in this, human condition, and we also are all this, these spiritual beings. And when we can find that place inside of ourselves where that clarity is, it changes everything. And it changed me completely. The world was very overwhelming to me. In fact, like coming out of college, I was having anxiety attacks all the time. I just couldn't reconcile the way the world was with the way that I knew myself as. And I didn't know where I fit in the world. I didn't know, how to really digest the way people treat each other, and and the egos and all of that. And it was a long journey for me. And and feeling so much, it was just overwhelming. And I did a lot of avoidance. I just go spend
Put
time by
this
myself a
feeling
lot.
over here, do this thing over there.
Yeah, yeah. But I love people at the same time too. So I'm like, I gotta get back in. I'm like, oh, enough of this. Right?
Yeah.
Then I'd retreat
So
again.
sometimes
And
a
then,
push and pull, like it'd be like, okay, push and then pull to the
you know,
people. Oh, now gotta avoid again. Yeah.
it was funny that I always tell this story myself. I remember running to a client. I was actually at the grocery store, and she saw me walking from my vehicle into the grocery store, and she stopped and she's like, even like you're smiling all the time. You just walked across the parking lot and you have this big smile on your face. You must be like the happiest person I know. And I was like, I like that. I like that. And then I heard this message right away. They're going, you're not, you're not that happy. You just do that because it makes everybody else more bearable to you. Because when you smile at them, their energy shifts and then it feels better to be around them. I was like, that doesn't sound as nice as I'm this happy, fun person, but it really was like this constant game I was playing with the world of I got to make the world feel better so that I can feel okay.
Mm,
Versus people are
yeah.
going through what they need to go through, and I need to let them do that, and I need to know myself and be that.
Yeah, and I think that is hard when you are somebody that is empathic or, is highly sensitive to other people's emotions and their experiences. It is hard to and my background, David, is in mental health, so I'm a therapist, but and I don't do as much anymore, but sitting with people in these high levels of pain, that
Mhm,
they might be
mhm.
experiencing or things that they're holding, it
Yeah,
is very hard not to take, like you said earlier, that energy onto yourself and their pain or suffering onto themselves and
yeah.
be comfortable with letting them be in their experience
Mhm. That they
and you
need
be
it's important for
in
them to be
your
having it.
experience and
Yeah,
just witness that experience that
yeah.
they're having,
Mhm.
and So it sounds like for you, you had to figure this out for yourself as
Yeah, it
you
was a
went
long
through
journey.
your journey. Yeah. Of how do you just let people sit with their things with not trying to take it over or not trying to take it on yourself, and for you to be in alignment with who you are and how that really is a gift to somebody else in that moment.
Right, and we're each having our own experience based on our past, and we tell ourselves
Mhm.
stories all the time, and those stories become our truths, and so we need to let people have them instead of thinking everybody's stories need to be the same as ours, and,
Changed.
and it's funny to me, like, I see energy too, and so I'm always having a very rich experience of everything, and so I have to be really intentional where I connect with people. And so one of the things I do is like we have this center channel that runs energies, from God or source, right through our center channel and right through our body. And so when I used to, part of my coping mechanism was I'd everybody walk by, I'd get like a blueprint of. And part of that blueprint was, where are they struggling? Is this a threat for me? And it was just a reflection of my childhood. And so what I realized is I had to stop letting that be any of my business because none of it was a threat for me, almost none of it. And so I started experiencing people just right above their heads. And when I did that, I'm like, oh gosh, there's such a purity there. And such a like it's before it gets into our brain filter that goes, I'm resentful about that and I'm angry about this and this person better get out of my way. And so instead of reading that part of people that, we all have our struggles in the world, I started reading people more in their pureness. I'm like, oh, the world's beautiful. And 2 minutes ago, the world was pretty rough, you know? And so it's really an interesting piece how we develop these coping mechanisms when we have an awareness that we all do, and I think that we're often just unaware of that awareness, but it's showing up. And I was the same way. Like I didn't know I was picking up on all this information. I'd just start talking about stuff like it was just a known reality, and people would get upset with me, and I'm like, are we not all having the same conversation? Like, what are you getting mad at me for? And they're like, nobody's brought this up. you know, Uh, like I'm like, what do you mean nobody's brought it up? It's here in the room with us. We all know what's going on here. Don't play games with me. Like what a jerk. Why is he trying to cause trouble? I'm like, what is
Yeah,
happening?
well, and it sounds like that you like, again, you had an awareness of things, even it sounds like probably from, a younger age, whereas others might not have seen what you saw, right?
Yeah,
Whenever
yeah.
you were engaging or just, being around somebody, and yeah, I mean, that must have to be really hard for seasons of your life to move through that.
And it's funny, I was just saying that, like, I was even when I was a teacher and continued into adulthood where I just would miss that. I was teaching at an alternative school where the teachers ran the school, and so we'd have these big meetings, and I would just start talking about stuff that was just so obviously what we were talking about to me, and people would get upset with me. I'm like, why are people getting upset with me? I came in as a newer teacher, and this was, people had been there for like 30 or 40 years, and I would just talk about these obvious things. And then after I'd been there for 6 months, another teacher pulled me aside and she goes, I have to tell you that when you first came here, I thought you were the biggest jerk I ever met because you just kept saying these things that were just so not true and off the wall and out of nowhere. And then I've been listening to you because you kept saying them, and I realized you're right. I'm like, I thought we all knew about him. I'm but I was like, why is everybody mad at me all the time here? Like, I don't understand. But it
Yeah.
was just that, like, a cluelessness of what wasn't on the table.
Well, and I think when you're in something like that for 30 something years, right? You're not always
Yeah,
aware
yeah, you get
of, like you
blind.
said, you're like going through the motions. So sometimes it takes that outside perspective to be like, are y'all not all seeing what I'm seeing? I'm curious, David, what kind of alternative school was this for teenagers?
Yeah, so it was actually a pre-K through 12 was the school, but it was
Okay.
awesome. So it was a lot of it was really experiential learning where we would take kids on trips. We studied the Mayans, and I took kids down to the Yucatan Peninsula for 10 days. We
Oh, that sounds
studied
fun.
Lake Powell and went and lived on a houseboat for a week. So all kinds of cool
When I
experiences.
think of alternative school, I'm thinking about this alternative school that I used to work at, which was like, it was typically for kids that were maybe not, they were behind in high school, or they might have
Yeah,
gotten
yeah.
involved with juvenile justice system or something like that. So is that kind of, but this sounds like the fun alternative
Well, we had
school.
some of that too, right? And it
Okay.
was a real safe haven for those kids because they didn't
Yeah,
fit
yeah,
into other
yeah.
systems, and so it was really student directed. They got to study, and it was really fun because we got to teach what we wanted too. So I was a
Wow.
culinary teacher too, and I taught
Oh,
meditation, and
wow.
and I taught math, and I taught language arts. And so I taught all
That's
these
when
different
actually
things.
you wanna be the kid that doesn't fit in traditional education system, and you're like, "Sign me up for that school." I mean, that sounds like
Yeah.
super fun to me.
Yeah, it
Field
was fun.
trips, that
I
stuff.
enjoyed working there, it was I mean, the challenge came for me too was how do we marry that with also preparing them for the world? And
Yeah.
so that was the big fight that I was in with it is, and that's really what I think about what I do now is like, you see all these people that are so spiritual and not able to ground it in and have an impact on the world. That was kind of the battle I was in there. Like these kids they're feeling really good about themselves now, but they need these skills to go out into the world and be successful because the world isn't going to care about how they, like they can't just not show up today because they had a bad emotional day or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah,
so,
that's really yeah, I can kinda see that because you're like, we're giving them this really interesting experience that taps into maybe their skill sets and their strengths and
yeah,
their, creativities and a different way of learning and growing, but at the same time too, you still have to go out and live in this very systematic,
not always kind,
societal
often not kind
pressure
world. Yeah, yeah,
type environment that just doesn't say, all the time you just show up whenever you want to or do whatever you want to.
mhm,
There's still sometimes rules and structures that unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, we
yeah,
have to
maybe necessary.
live
Yeah.
within. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I look at my work that I do with this, it is very spiritual in nature, but it's also so pragmatic and practical and applied and about making a difference in the world and bringing our greatest gifts. And so, I guess I didn't even think about that until this moment. But that is, like as I started to engage in spirituality, I was like, gosh, like when does anything get done? Like we're all just off in some non-ordinary reality going, wow, this is amazing. I can't believe this is available to me. Like, where am I? Versus like I have some real clear gifts that I need to bring to the world and change things. And so that
Yeah.
pragmatic application of it.
Yeah, I love that because you're right. I mean, and not that you can't have periods of your time of your life if you have that ability and you
Sure.
choose to, go on a
And the
sojourn
exploration. Yeah.
journey and to the
Yeah.
exploration of spiritual. We still live in a very physical form, physical world. And how do you marry those two of who you are intrinsically
Hmm.
and what you feel you're receiving and where you feel you're being led or called? Still using that in a very physical world. I mean, we're
Yes. Yeah.
physical, we're here. This is a
Yeah.
microphone, this is Christy, that's David, for those of y'all aren't listening, y'all are hearing us, but, we're still not like these little blurbs of light floating around right now, right? Like,
Yeah.
we're here. I mean, we are and we aren't, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But,
I always joke too with people. I remember being somewhere that the guy's like, "Oh, do you have like a spiritual name?" I go, "I do, David." It's like, it's also a practical name. Like it's the same.
that is so funny. Okay, well, David, for those of the people that are listening, they're like, this sounds great and all, but I don't even know, kind of how to unpack all of what
Yeah.
you're talking about. Where would you say is the first basis, like base number one, that if people are ready to say, I want to learn how to be here,
Yeah.
but also be me and
Yeah.
be in tune with that,
Be even more me. Yeah. Yeah.
even more me. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Feel like I'm really me. Where would you say? What would you say to think about? Where would you say go next? I
Yeah.
know
Well,
it's not as easy
let's
as
just do a
all.
quick experience. Too,
Woo, yes,
if
I'm
that's
all
all
about
right. Yeah.
experiences.
Awesome. And so this is what I call the consciousness lock. And it's basically saying, there's the outer world out there and there's me in here and it bleeds back and forth. So if I don't have a clear separation, a clear delineation between me and the outer world, we're just I'm always my body's vibrating the frequency of my surroundings is what I often say. I'm just in resonance with whatever's around me instead of resonance with myself. And so this gives us the tool to be internal and to be resonant with ourselves. And consciousness lock comes from the idea of an airlock, like an astronaut going into the space shuttle. They can't just open the shuttle. The vacuum of space would suck the pressurized cabin out. And so there needs to be a pod that they go through where they basically seal the outside of space, go in there, pressurize the pod, and go inside. And so we do the same thing. So if you're cool, I'll take us through
Yeah,
this really quick.
let's
And
do it.
awesome.
If you are driving,
Yeah,
this
don't
might
do
be a
this.
good place to pause and come back when you are in a very comfortable seated position and nobody's going to get injured. Go ahead.
Absolutely. No heavy equipment.
That's my disclaimer.
If you're driving a bus, if you're flying a plane, yeah.
Come back back later. Push pause and come back
Yeah.
to this point.
Yeah, and so let's just close our eyes for a second and just start to experience how are we experiencing ourselves right now? What's my sense of the world around me? What's the sense of me? Does it feel like it gets kind of blendy? Even where in my body am I kind of thinking from? Am I in the front of my brain, like, trying to make sense of this all? And so we'll let go of it for a second. We'll put our hands out with our palms open. We're just going to push the world back around us. We're just going to go, I want some space. I want to create some space around me. And I'll help you energetically with this. And so as we push the world back, in just a second, what we're going to do is we're going to close our hands into fists. And we're going to bring them down to our laps. And we're going to just drop into a little bubble and just be fully in our physical bodies. And we're going to let things just turn off that connection with the external world. So as you're ready, go ahead and close hands into fists, bring them down to your lap, and just picture yourself dropping into your physical body as that bubble seals over the top of your head, your face, back of your head, and your heart, and back of your heart, and down below your feet, and just being in that space. And so, Christy, what do you notice as we drop into this little bubble?
Ooh, I don't know. It feels kind of good.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, it just feels like I don't know. How can I explain this? More centered, I guess.
yeah. Would you say quiet too?
Mhm.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because often the noise around us gets louder, like the environmental noise, because the energetic noise quiets. But we're not. Our game's not to stay here. And so, with your hands still closed in a fist, put one over your heart and one over your solar plexus, which is just below your ribs and the center of your body. And in just a second, we're going to open the palms and we're going to picture ourselves connecting with our center channel inside of ourselves, our spine, we can call it, that connection through with God or source through the top of the head and out the base of our spine into the earth. And so, as you're ready, go ahead and open up your palms. As you open up, bring your awareness inside yourself. We'll just create that connection with source or God or higher self, however you see it, through the top of the head, and just allow our awareness to kind of slide back in our brain a little bit to we're in a little bit more relaxed place. And we're also going to bring that anchoring in because we're here on this planet as humans to anchor into that earth, what I call the sacred earth, deep in the earth, clicking into that and bring the energy back up through the base of the spine, out the top of our heads, just being this conduit now between source and sacred earth, or between God and sacred earth, or our higher self and sacred earth, depending on how we see things. And so what do you experience things now, Christy, as we open up inside ourselves?
Kinda like you said, I mean, a grounding, maybe like a knowing.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. I can kinda see some different colors going back and forth as
Yeah,
my
yeah,
eyes
we
are
often see colors.
closed.
Beautiful.
Greenish, something.
Yeah. And so another thing that's really interesting is that we can't bring our stories in here with us. And so when we slide to the back of the brain and we're just in this place, and it's funny, there's almost like an amnesia. And so we all have stories about how the world is, about how we are, about how certain people are. And so I want you to pick somebody that maybe it's been a little bit challenging for you to be around and see if you can think of them from this place. How is it to find them from here?
I mean, it's just neutral.
Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it interesting how the story just falls apart when we're in our own alignment?
Mhm.
And so imagine all the stories we have about the world. And if they just fall apart and the only thing that really matters is our own truth and then the reflection of that truth in the world, what does that free up for us? What does that put us in touch with inside of ourselves? And what does that disengage us from that steals our energy all the time in the world? And so, this is the aligned living state, the beginning of it. And I always joke, we all have aligned moments, but aligned living is about stabilizing in this state of consciousness where we're just like, I'm really free. I'm really free from all that stuff out there. And I can actually know my truth and live from that place. And so, yeah, you can open your eyes if you'd like. And yeah, but yeah, that's cool that you're seeing colors too. People often do see colors uh, in there. So how are you doing?
Oh, I'm
And
doing good. I mean, this just reminds me that every moment that you just take to do something, and then we're not gonna, like, I don't wanna diminish it, but, like, as simple as
yeah.
take a moment to try to reconnect, you know what I mean,
hmm
with whatever you perceive as source, I'd say God, right?
Yeah.
And allow
Yeah.
yourself to just kind of let everything else fade away.
Yeah.
You really do come to a point that you're like, nothing else really matters. Like, we're just
Nothing. Yeah.
here,
And
you know?
absolutely. That's a great way of saying it. And the tools we use, I take people through this as a 10-week program because it takes 10 weeks to learn to stabilize there and all the tools that go with it and the expansiveness that goes with it. But when we learn to live from there, like it's such a different experience, and we experience ourselves so differently. And we just go, gosh, I just don't need to be entangled in all the I'm upset about this and all these stories. And it's a place where we stop abandoning ourselves. And it's also a place where we meet God or source and go, gosh, from here, from this aligned place, my will and God's will actually align. I'm not fighting
Mhm.
against anymore. I'm not trying to create all these things that are about my ego or about because I'm upset about that or I'm trying to fix this. Like I'm actually in this place where it all aligns and there's so much support from that place. Because
Yeah.
otherwise we're fighting against.
Well, and I think there's so much more peace from that place, right?
Mm,
Because I don't know about you, David, but I mean, there are situations you can go in a day that can really trigger you into
mm,
this not maybe best place. It's more of a place of reactivity that you are, in that moment
mm.
reacting to something that's unsettling to you or that you
Yeah,
don't
absolutely.
like, or you don't like this
Mm,
way this person said something, or their energy is really just bothering you because you just wish they'd get on the bandwagon and be just a little bit more peaceful. Okay. Why they got to
yeah.
do that? Why they got to do that? And then when you are able to kind of just like, honestly, and I know it's again, not to oversimplify it, but just allow your the space to be, reconnect,
Mm,
then there is this like you said, like a freedom. I don't want to say
mm,
maybe freedom's not the right word, but there's like a less of a resistance
yeah.
to things that are coming to you.
Yeah, you're not in
Um,
congestion. You're not so
yeah.
congested with all the what's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so David, if people are like, okay, listen, I just felt my own self, you know,
I wanna live that way. Yeah.
yeah, I want to live that way. And they're like, I want to find out more about this aligned living system. How can they find out more about you and maybe how to do some exploration in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to my website, which is davidwaldas.com, there's a breakdown there of the different programs that I offer, and I actually train coaches in this same system too, to teach it as well, and to teach other people how to do it. And so, if you're a coach and you're looking to expand, that's a really it's one of my favorite things to do is to just because it creates that exponential impact when I teach somebody else how to coach this and take people through it. Now it's out in the world through them as well and through all the people they touch. And so, I also offer small groups and then one-to-one coaching too with it. And so, yeah, if you go to my webpage, it's right there. And my book, Insight, Influence, and Flow is also available through, you can click
Okay.
on the link there. If you wanted to, if you're somebody who wants to kind of stay a little bit distant and read a little bit about it first or listen to Audible, that's available as well. But if you're ready to just go for it,
Dive on
and there,
in. Just
yeah,
let's,
yeah. There
yeah.
is a free video class too that takes you through some of the stuff we did today, but it'll take a little bit deeper dive into it to give you a greater taste of what this is, to give you some aligned moments that you can decide if you want to turn into aligned living.
Okay, awesome. Well, we'll definitely make sure we will link that up in the show notes. Well,
Yep.
David, I do have a question for you that I like to ask all my guests that come on the show. And this, I'm curious. So, if you were to give yourself, and it may have been younger you in like high school,
Oh God, that guy.
whenever you were that kid that everybody was like, we don't know what to do with David, and David don't know what to do with him,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
or it could have been at a different point in your life before you really found this way of living more in an aligned system. What's one piece of like either wisdom or maybe it's the gift of this? What would you have gifted yourself or maybe a word of encouragement that you would have given younger you if you
Yeah,
could go back?
I think that when I look back on the crazy journey that I had to get here, and I know most of us have crazy journeys, right? And that there's just so much value in every step of it. And when I look back on some of the hardest moments, the most suffering I'd been through, the darkest nights of the soul experiences, like so much of who I am got revealed in that. And when we value every bit of experience that we're having, not just the days that feel good. The days that feel good are usually kinda a little bit useless in our
Yeah.
they're kinda candy, right? But the days that we've been through it, the months we've been through it, they're creating something. They're creating some sort of foundation. It's funny, I'm 54 now, and when I look back at my life, I'm like, "Gosh, man, I'm just so grateful for all the shit that I went through to get here." because it makes now like so powerful and so
Yeah.
enjoyable. And to trust that process, it
Yeah, so trust the
and
process.
unfold it.
Keep going, younger David, keep going.
And value it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, I do think about I was having that rando thought earlier. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, and I was like, and I think it was actually this morning while I was
Mhm.
getting ready. I was thinking to myself, like, there were so many points in time in my life where I was like, and honestly, I was like, "I don't know what God is bringing me through right now. I
Mm.
have no idea. This does not make sense. This is not my idea of how I wanted this to go." You know what I mean? And now that I'm here at this point in the journey, I'm like, honestly, all of that was working towards my good or my
Yeah.
development or my, that experience that then allows me to either help someone else along the journey or whatever,
Mm.
and I wouldn't have
Divine
made it
plan.
here had things happened any other way, and so it is crazy to think back when you really do think back on younger you, and what piece of advice or word of encouragement or thing that you would gift you, and I agree, I think it's just like, "Listen, this journey ain't gonna make a lick of sense, okay? Through some of this stuff you're going through, but you just keep on going, find value in it, and one day you're gonna be like, "Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank
Maybe
God
I
for
see a
that,
little bit
right?
of what this whole purpose was and some of the hard." Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and there's a divine plan, and we're in it, and so
Yeah.
trusting that, and the moment we think our
Yeah,
human
trust
brain
in
knows
that.
better, we just, need to take a deep breath and and laugh at ourselves, right?
I know. I know. Listen, it's crazy because I just think about, man, I mean, this little ball that we're like, happen to be somehow not falling off of, has lasted
Hurtling through
for
space, yeah.
more time than we can probably conceptualize in our, brain. And sometimes it's just trusting that knowing and trusting that guidance of like there is something a lot greater than us has that's orchestrating all this. We just got to learn how to just be along for the ride, be along for the ride.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's
Yeah.
all a miracle, right? I remember being a kid and sitting in an earth science class and learning about, wait a minute, we're flying through space, we're
Yeah.
circling the like, what? Like, we're all gonna die, except for this divine synchronicity that flows through everything and keeps it all in perfect harmony.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, David, I just want to say I appreciate you for, not only going through your own experiences, right? But then you found a way to really say, how can I not only just keep this experience or these gifts that I've been given or my uniqueness to myself? I want to find a way other people can tap into this and really have more of a way that they can move through life in an aligned way. And so you could have just got this download and been like, okay,
All mine.
yay, I got the secret. But then you're like, "No, I really feel like this is a way that I've learned to have a lot more peace in living, and I wanna help other people find that." And I think in today's world, there's a lot of people that
Mhm.
really struggle to find that peace and that clarity, and sometimes it's moment by moment, but,
Sure.
I think if we can all find a little bit more ways to live in this aligned life or just like in that experience that you led us through, if you can find a way to magnify that into your everyday existence, man, what a great way that would be to live, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is. Believe me. And it's not about being perfect, we all fall off the
No.
horse and we just go, "Well, I don't like that option so much. Why don't I get back into alignment?" And instead of telling myself this story or that story or getting sucked into
Yeah.
this thing, and so none of it's about being perfect, but it is all about I have choices. And
Well,
more time I spend here, the better my life goes and the more fulfilled I am and the more I support other people and the more of service I am.
yeah. Yeah, and that's true, man. The more time we can spend here versus over here, woo. Because we're all human, so,
Mhm.
right? Like, this is
Absolutely.
not something that you can just be one and done, right, David? I mean, this is not a
Yeah,
one and done
yeah.
situation, right?
No, no, it's a constant intention, and most of us have spent our whole
Mhm.
lives living in these stories, and so it takes a while to go, well, this is a much truer story to me, and I realized
Yeah.
who I was in those other aspects were just coping mechanisms and identity pieces that just aren't really me, and
Yeah.
and of course, like, I don't judge myself for being those things. It was my journey home,
Yeah.
and the closer I get to home, the more connected I feel, the more me I feel, and there's nothing more enjoyable than that. And people are afraid of it because they're afraid there's some horrible thing about them on the other side of that. And it's always the opposite. It's always our most beautiful, self that, everybody, it's our greatest expression, and it's God's light running through us. And
Yeah.
it's funny that we're afraid of it, but of course we are conditioned.
Yeah. Well, David, I appreciate you coming on the show. And for y'all listening, y'all know I always just try to recap one nugget of truth that I'm just gonna run with today because y'all know I do this podcast more for me than y'all. I'm just kidding. It is for y'all, but I learn a lot too. But one of the best things that you can do is find your way back to you. And so go check out David's stuff and find a little bit ways to live a little bit more aligned. And like David said, I don't think you're going to regret it. Until next time.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.